On my 50th birthday, my businessman's son visited me and asked, "Dad, are you satisfied with the $7,000 my wife deposits every month?" I hesitated and answered quietly, "Son, actually, it's the neighbors who've been helping me with food." And right at that moment, my daughter-in-law walked into the room. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this and comment the city you're watching from. The silence that followed felt like the whole world had stopped breathing. Tyler's face went through several emotions at once: confusion, disbelief, then something darker I hadn't seen since he was a teenager caught in a lie. Stella froze in the doorway, her perfectly manicured hand still gripping the door handle, her designer purse sliding slowly down her shoulder. "What did you just say, Dad?" Tyler's voice came out strained, like he was forcing the words through a tight throat. I looked directly at him, my son who I'd raised to value honesty above everything else. "The neighbors, Tyler. Mrs. Rodriguez brings me soup twice a week. The Johnsons leave groceries on my porch every Friday. Yesterday, Mr. Peterson fixed my broken refrigerator because I couldn't afford the repair." Stella's laugh came out sharp and artificial. "Louis, you're being dramatic again. Of course you have food. I transfer money to your account every single month, just like Tyler asked me to." She stepped into the room with that confident stride she always used when she needed to control a situation, but I'd been preparing for this moment for 3 months. 3 long months of sleepless nights, of swallowing my pride while eating charity meals, of watching my son's wife lie so effortlessly that I wondered if Tyler had any idea who he'd married. "Show me the bank statements then," I said calmly. "Show me where this $7,000 appears in my account." Tyler looked between us like he was watching a tennis match he didn't understand the rules to. "Dad, what are you talking about? Stella handles all our finances. She's been taking care of you since Mom died." The mention of my late wife Sarah hit me like it always did, but today it strengthened my resolve rather than weakening it. Sarah would have seen through Stella's act immediately. Sarah would have protected our son from this woman who smiled while she lied. "I'm talking about the fact that I haven't received a single penny from you or your wife in over 2 years," I continued, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. "I'm talking about the fact that I've been living on Social Security and the kindness of neighbors while apparently you've been paying $7,000 a month for my care." Stella's face had gone pale beneath her expensive makeup. "Tyler, your father is clearly confused. Maybe we should talk to his doctor about his memory." That's when I smiled. Not a happy smile, but the smile of a man who'd been underestimated for too long. "My memory is perfectly fine, Stella. In fact, it's been quite helpful these past few months." I reached into the drawer of my old desk and pulled out a manila folder. Inside were bank statements, printed emails, and photographs that would change everything, but I wasn't ready to show them yet. This moment needed to unfold slowly, carefully, so that Tyler could see each lie unravel in sequence. "Tyler, when did you start sending money for my care?" I asked. "Right after Mom's funeral," he answered immediately. 2 years and 3 months ago. I told Stella to set up automatic transfers because I knew you'd be too proud to ask for help." 2 years and 3 months, I repeated. "That's interesting. Because 2 years and 3 months ago, I started wondering why you never called anymore, why you never visited. I thought maybe you were just busy with work, with your new marriage." Stella moved closer to Tyler, placing her hand on his arm in that possessive way she always did when she felt threatened. "Honey, your father is obviously having some kind of episode. Maybe we should call Dr. Martinez." "Actually," I said, standing up slowly from my chair, "I saw Dr. Martinez last week. Clean bill of health, sharp as ever," he said. "Especially my memory." The room felt electric with tension. Tyler kept looking back and forth between us, and I could see the exact moment when doubt crept into his eyes. He'd always been smart, my boy. Maybe too trusting, but smart. "Dad, if you haven't been getting the money, where has it been going?" Before I could answer, Stella jumped in. "Tyler, don't let him manipulate you like this. Your father has always been jealous of our success, of our lifestyle. He's probably been saving the money and pretending to be poor to make us feel guilty." I had to admire her strategy. Turn the victim into the villain. Make the son question his father's motives instead of her actions. It was manipulative and clever, which told me this wasn't her first time orchestrating such a performance. "That's an interesting theory," I said, "but easy enough to prove wrong. Tyler, call your bank right now. Ask them to read you the account number where those transfers have been going for the past 2 years. Tyler pulled out his phone without hesitation. He trusted his wife completely, which made what was about to happen even more painful to watch. As he dialed, I noticed Stella's breathing had become shallow, quick. Her hand moved instinctively to her purse, like she was calculating distances to the door. Yes, this is Tyler Morrison. I need to verify some automatic transfers from my account. Yes, I'll hold. The silence while we waited felt endless. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall, the sound of Mrs. Rodriguez's television through the thin walls, the whistle of wind through the gap in my window that I couldn't afford to fix. The account ending in 7749, Tyler repeated into the phone. $7,000 monthly for 27 months. Yes, that's correct. He hung up and looked at me. Dad, the money has been going out every month exactly like I set it up. I'm sure it has, I replied. The question is, where has it been going? That's when I opened the folder and pulled out the first document, a bank statement with Stella's name at the top, showing regular deposits of exactly $7,000 and corresponding withdrawals for designer clothing, expensive restaurants, and luxury spa treatments. Tyler's face went white as he stared at the paper. Stella, what is this? But when we looked up, the doorway was empty. We could hear her heels clicking rapidly across the hardwood floor, then the sound of the front door slamming shut. 3 months earlier, I'd been cleaning out Sarah's old jewelry box when I found something that changed everything. Hidden beneath the velvet lining was a small key I didn't recognize. It took me 2 days to figure out what it opened. A safety deposit box Sarah had rented just before she died, one she'd never told me about. Inside that box, I found a letter addressed to me in her handwriting. Louis, it began, if you're reading this, then I'm gone and you're probably struggling more than you're willing to admit. I've been watching our son's wife, and I'm worried about what might happen to you after I'm not here to protect you anymore. Sarah had always been perceptive about people. During the 6 months between her diagnosis and her death, she'd spent a lot of time observing Stella, taking notes about inconsistencies in her stories, small lies that seemed harmless but painted a larger picture of deception. I've opened this safety deposit box and included $5,000, the letter continued. But more importantly, I've included the contact information for a private investigator named Michael Chen. If you ever suspect that Tyler's money isn't reaching you, call him immediately. Don't try to handle this alone. I'd sat in that sterile bank vault for 20 minutes, holding my dead wife's letter and crying for the first time since her funeral. She'd known. Somehow she'd known exactly what would happen. The discovery about the money came by accident 2 weeks later. I'd been sorting through mail that had piled up during a particularly difficult period of grief when I noticed an envelope addressed to me that had been opened and resealed. Inside was a statement from a bank account I didn't recognize, but my name was listed as an authorized user. The account showed regular deposits of $7,000 and a balance of 43 cents. That's when I called Michael Chen. Your wife was a smart woman, he'd told me during our first meeting. She hired me 6 months before she died to investigate your daughter-in-law's background. What I found wasn't illegal, but it was revealing. He'd shown me a file thick with documentation. Stella Morrison, born Stella Rodriguez in Las Vegas, had a pattern of targeting older financially stable men. She'd been married twice before Tyler, both times to men with aging parents who had assets worth inheriting. Her first husband was Robert Kim, age 32, whose father owned a chain of dry cleaners in California. Stella was married to Robert for 3 years, during which time his father's business mysteriously began failing. The father died of a heart attack just before bankruptcy proceedings began. Robert inherited debt instead of wealth, and Stella filed for divorce 2 months later. Her second husband was Marcus Williams, 35, whose mother owned rental properties in Arizona. Similar pattern. Stella became the caretaker for the elderly mother, managed her finances, and the properties were gradually sold off to cover supposed medical expenses. The mother died in a nursing home Stella had chosen, and again, Stella divorced her husband shortly after the inheritance was settled. I'd stared at the photographs of Stella with her previous husbands, the same practiced smile, the same designer clothes that someone else had paid for. How did she meet Tyler? At a grief counseling group for people who'd lost parents. Tyler was there dealing with your wife's cancer diagnosis. Stella was there claiming to grieve her grandmother, though our investigation couldn't verify that any grandmother had died. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Stella had targeted my son during his most vulnerable moment, when Sarah was dying and Tyler was desperate for someone to share his pain. She'd played the role of the understanding girlfriend, the supportive wife who wanted to help care for his aging father. We traced the bank account, Michael had continued. The $7,000 goes into an account in Stella's name only. She's been using it to fund a lifestyle well beyond what your son's income could support. Designer clothes, expensive dinners, weekend trips to resorts. She's been living like a wealthy woman on money intended for your care. What about Tyler? Does he know? No evidence suggests he's aware of any of this. In fact, our surveillance indicates he genuinely believes you're being well cared for. Stella shows him fake receipts for groceries she supposedly buys for you, forged invoices for home repairs she claims to have arranged. She's created an entire fiction about your life that your son has no reason to question. The worst part was learning how systematic it had been. Stella had gradually isolated Tyler from me, convincing him that I was becoming forgetful and difficult, that his visits upset me, that it was better for my health if she handled all communication between us. She'd made my son believe that staying away was an act of love. "What do you want me to do with this information?" Michael had asked. I'd thought about that for days. Part of me wanted to confront Tyler immediately, to destroy Stella's carefully constructed lies and reclaim my relationship with my son. But Sarah's voice kept echoing in my memory. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let people reveal themselves. "I want you to document everything," I'd finally told him. "Every transaction, every lie, every manipulation. I want evidence so clear that when the truth comes out, there can be no doubt about what happened." For 3 months, Michael had photographed Stella spending my care money on luxury items, while I ate dinner with neighbors who took pity on an old man they thought had been abandoned by his family. He'd recorded phone conversations where she laughed with friends about how easy it was to manipulate the old fool and his stupid son. The hardest recording to listen to was Stella talking to someone named Jessica about Tyler. "He's so grateful for everything I do for his pathetic father that he never questions anything. I could probably tell him I bought the old man a yacht and he'd believe me. The man has no backbone, no curiosity about anything that doesn't involve his precious business deals." That's when I knew Tyler wasn't just a victim in this situation. He was being manipulated and emotionally abused by a woman who viewed him as nothing more than a paycheck with convenient family assets. I'd spent weeks planning exactly how to reveal the truth. It had to be dramatic enough that Tyler couldn't dismiss it, public enough that Stella couldn't explain it away privately, and documented enough that the legal consequences would be unavoidable. My 50th birthday had been the perfect opportunity. Stella would be confident in her control over the situation, Tyler would be in a generous mood, and the symbolic weight of a milestone birthday would make the revelation unforgettable. As I sat in my living room listening to Stella's car speed away from my house, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, the satisfaction of a plan perfectly executed. But more importantly, I felt hope that my son might finally be free from a woman who had stolen not just money but 2 years of our relationship. Tyler was still staring at the bank statement, his hands shaking slightly. "Dad, I don't understand. Why would she do this? She said she loved taking care of you." I pulled out another document from the folder. "Son, I think it's time you heard what your wife really thinks about both of us." Tyler sank into Sarah's old armchair, the same one where she used to read to him when he was small. He looked smaller now than he had in years, diminished by the weight of what he was learning about the woman he'd trusted with everything. "Dad, I need to understand this completely. You're telling me that for over 2 years, Stella has been stealing money I sent for your care while making me believe you were being taken care of?" I nodded, pulling out a thick stack of photographs from the manila folder. "Tyler, what I'm about to show you is going to hurt, but you need to see who you really married." The first photograph showed Stella at an upscale restaurant I recognized from downtown, the kind of place that charged $50 for a steak. She was laughing with a group of women, designer handbag on the table, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. The timestamp showed it was taken 3 weeks ago, the same day she'd told Tyler she was spending the afternoon caring for me. "I remember this day," Tyler said quietly. "She said you had a doctor's appointment, and she was driving you there, then staying to make sure you ate properly afterward." I handed him the next photo. Stella at a luxury spa, getting what appeared to be an expensive facial treatment. The timestamp was from last month. "She told me you were having a difficult day with your arthritis, and she was spending the whole afternoon helping you with physical therapy exercises," Tyler said, his voice getting flatter with each revelation. Photo after photo told the same story. Stella at expensive boutiques, charging hundreds of dollars on a credit card. Stella at a high-end salon getting her hair done. Stella meeting friends for champagne lunches that cost more than most people spent on groceries in a week. Every single one of these was taken on a day she told me she was here with you, Tyler said. Every single time she came home with stories about how your day went, what you ate, what you talked about. She's very creative, I said, trying to keep the bitterness out of my voice. Michael Chen, the investigator, said she keeps a journal of fictional interactions with me. She's got notes about conversations we supposedly had, medical concerns she supposedly helped me with, repairs she supposedly arranged for the house. Tyler looked around my living room as if seeing it for the first time. The peeling wallpaper, the duct tape holding the arm of my recliner together, the space heater I used because the central heating had broken last winter and I couldn't afford to fix it. Dad, this house is falling apart. If she was really spending $7,000 a month on your care, where would the money have gone? I pulled out a folder of invoices and receipts that Michael had compiled. According to Stella's records, she's been paying for a housekeeper who comes 3 times a week, a handyman who does regular maintenance, grocery deliveries, and a nurse who checks on me twice a month. She even has fake receipts for medical equipment she supposedly bought for me. Tyler's face was cycling through emotions, confusion, anger, disbelief, and something that looked like grief. Show me the worst of it, Dad. I need to see how bad this really is. I hesitated. The worst evidence would destroy whatever love Tyler still felt for his wife, but it would also show him how completely he'd been manipulated. Are you sure? Show me everything. I pulled out a small recording device. Michael was able to record some phone conversations. This one is from 2 weeks ago, when Stella thought she was talking privately to her friend Jessica. I pressed play. Stella's voice filled the room, clear and unmistakable. The old man is so pathetic, Jessica. He actually believes his son forgot about him. Tyler thinks I'm some kind of saint for taking care of his decrepit father, but I haven't set foot in that dump of a house in 6 months. Tyler's face went white. Stella's voice continued. $7,000 a month to babysit an old fool who's too proud to tell his son the truth. It's like winning the lottery. Tyler works 80 hours a week and never questions anything I tell him about dear old Dad. Jessica's voice came through the recording. What if the old man tells Tyler the truth? Who's going to believe him? I've been telling Tyler for months that his father is getting forgetful, maybe developing dementia. If Lewis ever says anything, Tyler will just think it's his deteriorating mind. It's the perfect setup. The recording went silent. Tyler sat motionless, staring at the device like it might explode. There's more, I said gently. Tyler is so grateful for everything I do that he never questions the credit card bills. I told him I was buying medical supplies for his father, but really I just bought those diamond earrings I showed you. The man is completely clueless. Tyler stood up abruptly and walked to the window, his back to me. His shoulders were shaking. I have recordings of her laughing about my loneliness, I continued, joking with her friends about how I probably sit by the window waiting for visits that never come, making fun of the fact that neighbors bring me food because she's convinced you that I'm too proud to accept help. Stop, Tyler said, his voice barely audible, but I couldn't stop. He needed to hear it all. She told someone named Maria that she was planning to wait until I died, then convince you that my house was worth more than it actually is, so she could take a larger share when you inherited it. She's been researching the property values in this neighborhood for months. Tyler turned around and I saw tears streaming down his face. Dad, I thought I was taking care of you. I thought I was being a good son. Every month when I sent that money, I felt proud that I could provide for you the way you provided for me growing up. You were being a good son, Tyler. You were being the man your mother and I raised you to be. Stella took advantage of that goodness. But how could I have been so blind? How could I have gone 2 years without visiting you properly, without seeing that you were struggling? This was the moment I'd been dreading, when Tyler would start blaming himself, instead of recognizing that he'd been systematically manipulated by someone who had studied his vulnerabilities and exploited them expertly. Because she made sure you stayed away, I said firmly. Every time you mentioned visiting, she had a reason why it wasn't a good idea. I was having a bad day, or I was sleeping more, or the doctor said I needed quiet. She controlled every piece of information that passed between us. I pulled out another set of documents. These are the text messages she sent you, claiming they were from me. Michael was able to recover them from her phone. Tyler read through messages supposedly from me saying I was tired, that I understood he was busy, that Stella was taking excellent care of me and he shouldn't worry about visiting so often. I never sent any of these, I said. I don't even know how to send text messages, but every one of them was designed to make you feel like staying away was what I wanted. Tyler crumpled the papers in his fist. She made me believe that you preferred her company to mine. She said older people sometimes bond more easily with caregivers than with family because there's less emotional baggage. And that made sense to you because you loved me enough to want what was best for me, even if it meant stepping back, I said. That's not stupidity, Tyler. That's love being used against you. Tyler walked back to the chair and sat down heavily. What else don't I know about my own wife? I pulled out the final folder, the one that would change everything between Tyler and Stella forever. Son, there's something else. Something that's going to be harder to hear than the money. What could be worse than this? I handed him a series of photographs taken outside a hotel downtown. Stella entering the building with a man I didn't recognize. The same man leaving 3 hours later, both of them looking like they'd spent the afternoon doing something that had nothing to do with caring for elderly fathers. The investigator followed her on 7 different occasions when she told you she was here with me. 5 times, she met this same man at the same hotel. Twice she met a different man at a restaurant, then went to his apartment. Tyler stared at the photos with the expression of a man watching his entire world collapse. She's been cheating on me. For at least 6 months that we can document, I said gently. Possibly longer. He set the photos down carefully, like they might break. Using money I gave her to take care of my father, she's been funding her affairs with other men. Tyler, I'm sorry. I know this isn't how you wanted to find out. He was quiet for a long time, just sitting there processing the complete destruction of everything he'd believed about his marriage, his wife, and his role as a son. Finally, he looked up at me. Dad, why didn't you just tell me? Why go through all this investigation and planning? Why not just call me and explain what was happening? It was a fair question, and one I'd asked myself many times over the past 3 months. Because I needed you to see the whole truth, not just part of it. If I'd told you Stella wasn't giving me money, she would have convinced you I was confused or lying. If I'd told you she was cheating, she would have denied it and made you choose between believing her or believing me. This way there's no room for doubt, no way for her to manipulate the situation. Tyler nodded slowly. And no way for me to convince myself that you must be mistaken, or that there must be some explanation. Exactly. Your mother always said that the truth has to be complete to be powerful. Half-truths can be explained away, but the whole truth speaks for itself. As if summoned by the mention of his mother, Tyler looked around the room at the photographs of Sarah that I'd kept on every surface. Mom would have seen through Stella immediately, wouldn't she? I pulled out Sarah's letter from the safety deposit box and handed it to him. She did see through her. She tried to warn me before she died. Tyler read his mother's words in silence, and when he finished, he folded the letter carefully and handed it back to me. Dad, I don't know how to apologize for letting this happen to you. You don't apologize for being manipulated by an expert, Tyler. You learn from it, and you make sure it never happens again. Outside, we heard a car door slam. Stella had returned, probably expecting to find Tyler confused and me discredited. She had no idea that her carefully constructed world of lies was about to collapse completely. The front door opened with the confident sound of someone who expected to control whatever situation awaited inside. Stella's heels clicked across the hardwood with their usual authority, but when she appeared in the living room doorway, her expression was carefully composed, the face of someone preparing for battle. Tyler, honey, I think your father is having some kind of breakdown, she said, her voice dripping with manufactured concern. We should probably call Dr. Martinez and have him evaluated. Sometimes elderly people create elaborate fantasies when they're feeling neglected. Tyler didn't look at her. He was still holding the photographs of her hotel visits, studying them like he was memorizing every detail. Stella, sit down. We need to talk. Of course, sweetheart. But first, let me explain what really happened here. She moved toward Tyler with that practiced grace she always used when she needed to seem vulnerable and caring. Your father has been calling me terrible names, accusing me of stealing from him. I think he might be having some kind of paranoid episode. Sit down, Stella. Tyler's voice was flat, emotionless. For the first time since I'd known her, Stella looked uncertain. She remained standing, her designer handbag clutched in front of her like a shield. Tyler, you're scaring me. What has your father been telling you? I reached for the recording device and pressed play. without warning. Stella's own voice filled the room. $7,000 a month to babysit an old fool who's too proud to tell his son the truth. It's like winning the lottery. Stella's face went through a series of rapid changes. Surprise, calculation, then a kind of cold fury I'd never seen from her before. Tyler, that's not what it sounds like. I was just venting to a friend about how difficult it's been caring for your father. Sometimes caregivers say things they don't mean when they're overwhelmed. Tyler finally looked up at her. Keep listening. The recording continued with Stella's laughter about Tyler never questioning her credit card bills, about buying diamond earrings with money meant for my medical care, about my loneliness being entertaining to her. This is taken out of context, Stella said, but her voice had lost its earlier confidence. Tyler, you know how much I love your father. You know how hard I've worked to take care of him. Tyler stood up and walked to my desk, where I'd laid out all the evidence in careful stacks. He picked up the bank statements showing the deposits into Stella's personal account. Explain these, he said. Stella glanced at the papers, and I saw her mental calculations accelerating. She was trying to figure out how much we knew, how much we could prove, and what story might still save her. Those statements are fake, she said finally. Your father has obviously hired someone to create false documents to support his delusions. Tyler, this is elder abuse. He's being manipulated by people who want to destroy our marriage. It was a clever strategy. Turn the evidence into proof of a conspiracy against her. Make Tyler question the source rather than the content. Under different circumstances, it might have worked. The investigator also took photographs, Tyler said calmly. He held up the pictures of Stella at expensive restaurants and spas. These were taken on days when you told me you were here caring for Dad. Stella looked at the photographs and her composure cracked slightly. Tyler, I can explain those. Sometimes caring for elderly people is emotionally exhausting. I needed breaks to decompress, to be able to come back and provide better care. $700 spa treatments? Tyler asked. $500 dinners? Using money I gave you specifically for Dad's care. I was using my own money for those things, Stella said quickly. The money you gave me went directly to your father's needs. Tyler pulled out the receipts for the fictional services Stella had supposedly been providing. Show me the housekeeper you hired. Give me the phone number for the nurse who's been checking on Dad twice a month. I want to meet the handyman who's been doing all these repairs. Stella's eyes darted around the room, taking in the peeling wallpaper, the broken furniture, the obvious signs of neglect that contradicted every story she'd told Tyler about my care. They're independent contractors, she said. They work for cash. I don't have formal records for everything. But you have receipts for services that were never provided, Tyler said. Detailed invoices for medical equipment that doesn't exist in this house. Bills for home repairs that were never done. That's when Stella made her crucial mistake. Instead of continuing to deny or trying to explain, she went on the attack. Tyler, I can't believe you're letting your father manipulate you like this. He's always been jealous of our success, of our lifestyle. He can't stand that his son married someone who doesn't settle for mediocrity. The room went very quiet. Tyler set down the photographs and looked at his wife with an expression I'd never seen before. Mediocrity? He said. You know what I mean. Your father has always resented that we don't live in a falling-down house, that we don't shop at thrift stores, that we have nice things. This whole elaborate story is his way of trying to drive a wedge between us. Tyler walked over to the recording device and fast-forwarded to a specific section. Listen to this part again, Stella. Her voice played back. Tyler is so grateful for everything I do that he never questions the credit card bills. The man is completely clueless. Stella's face flushed red. That was just girl talk, Tyler. Women sometimes exaggerate when they're talking to friends. Exaggerate about what? Tyler asked. About how clueless your husband is, about how easy it is to steal from his father, about how you laugh at his trust in you. For the first time, Stella seemed to realize that this wasn't going to end with Tyler choosing to believe her version of events. Her whole strategy had been built on the assumption that she could make him doubt me, but the evidence was too overwhelming. Tyler, please. You love me. We have a life together. Don't let an old man's bitterness destroy what we've built. Tyler pulled out the hotel photographs. What about these, Stella? She looked at the pictures of herself entering and leaving the hotel with another man, and something in her face just shut down. The performance was over. You had me followed, she said flatly. Dad had you followed, Tyler corrected, after he realized you were stealing money, meant for his care and lying about it for over 2 years. Stella looked at me with pure hatred. You vindictive old bastard. You couldn't stand that Tyler had found happiness without you. I couldn't stand that you were destroying my son while stealing from me and lying about both, I replied calmly. But please, continue. Tyler should hear what you really think about all of us. Fine, Stella said, dropping her pretense entirely. You want the truth? Your father is a pathetic old man who's been nothing but a burden since your mother died. I did you a favor by keeping you away from him. And yes, I used the money for myself because taking care of elderly people is disgusting work, and I deserved compensation for even pretending to do it. Tyler's face was stone. And the affairs? What affairs? You mean my adult friendships that I'm entitled to have because my husband works constantly and shows me no attention? Adult friendships in hotel rooms, Tyler said. My personal life is none of your business when you're never home to participate in it. The casual cruelty in her voice was breathtaking. She was burning every bridge, destroying every relationship, rather than show even a moment of genuine remorse. Stella, Tyler said quietly, I want you to leave. Leave? She laughed, but it sounded forced. Tyler, this is my house too. You can't just kick me out because your father fed you some lies. Tyler pulled out his phone. I'm calling my lawyer. I want to know what my options are for emergency separation based on financial fraud and adultery. That's when Stella's composure finally shattered completely. You're choosing him over me, after everything I've done for this family? After all the sacrifices I've made? What sacrifices? Tyler asked. You've been living a luxury lifestyle funded by money stolen from my father while he ate charity meals from neighbors. What exactly have you sacrificed? I sacrificed my time, my energy, pretending to care about that miserable old man when I could have been living my own life. The silence that followed was profound. Stella seemed to realize that she'd just admitted to everything we'd accused her of, but it was too late to take back the words. Tyler looked at her for a long moment, then turned to me. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so incredibly sorry for everything you've been through, for believing her lies, for staying away, for letting you suffer while thinking you were being cared for. Tyler, don't apologize for loving someone who didn't deserve it, I said. Apologize by making sure it never happens again. Stella grabbed her purse and headed toward the door, then turned back one final time. Tyler, when you realize what a mistake you're making, don't come crying to me. I won't be waiting around for you to remember how good you had it. Good, Tyler said simply. Because I'll be too busy taking actual care of my father to worry about maintaining relationships with people who lie and steal from my family. After Stella left, Tyler and I sat in the quiet living room, surrounded by the evidence of her betrayal, and began the long process of figuring out how to rebuild what she had deliberately destroyed. The money could be recovered. The trust would take longer. But for the first time in over 2 years, my son was really looking at me, really seeing me, and I knew that Sarah's plan had worked exactly as she'd hoped it would. The truth had set us both free. 3 days after Stella stormed out of my house, Tyler called me at 7 in the morning. His voice sounded like he hadn't slept in weeks. Dad, I need you to come with me to the bank today, and then to my lawyer's office. I've been digging deeper into our finances, and what I've found is worse than we thought. I'd been expecting this call. Michael Chen had warned me that the $7,000 a month was likely just the beginning of Stella's financial manipulation, but I'd decided to let Tyler discover the full scope himself. He needed to see how completely he'd been deceived. When Tyler picked me up that morning, he looked like a man who'd aged 10 years in 3 days. His usually perfect business attire was wrinkled, his hair uncombed, his eyes red-rimmed from exhaustion and stress. I haven't been able to sleep, he admitted as we drove toward downtown. Every night I lie awake thinking about all the signs I missed, all the times I should have questioned her stories. Dad, how could I have been so blind? Because you trusted your wife, I said simply. Because you were raised to believe that marriage means partnership and honesty. You weren't blind, Tyler. You were loving someone who didn't deserve it. At the bank, we met with Tyler's account manager, a woman named Patricia who'd been handling his business for years. She greeted Tyler warmly, but I could see concern in her expression. Mr. Morrison, you mentioned on the phone that you wanted to review all account activity for the past 2 years. That's quite extensive. Is there a specific issue we're investigating? Tyler's jaw tightened. I need to see every transaction my wife has made using our joint accounts, credit cards, and any accounts she may have opened in my name. Patricia's professional smile faltered slightly. That's a very serious request. Are you concerned about unauthorized activity? I'm concerned about authorized activity that I wasn't aware of, Tyler replied. What we discovered over the next 2 hours made the $7,000 monthly theft seem almost insignificant. Stella had been systematically draining Tyler's accounts for the entire duration of their marriage, not just the money designated for my care. She'd opened 3 credit cards in Tyler's name without his knowledge, running up balances of over $40,000 on luxury purchases. She'd taken out a personal loan against Tyler's business for $30,000, claiming it was for home renovations that had never happened. She'd even accessed Tyler's retirement account, withdrawing early and paying massive penalties to fund her lifestyle. The total unauthorized debt and withdrawals come to approximately $190,000, Patricia said, her voice carefully neutral. This doesn't include the monthly transfers to her personal account that you were aware of. Tyler sat in stunned silence, staring at the printouts that documented 2 years of systematic financial abuse. How is this possible? How did she access my retirement account without my knowledge? Patricia looked uncomfortable. She had power of attorney papers, very official-looking documents that gave her authority to make financial decisions on your behalf in case of emergency or incapacity. I never signed any power of attorney papers, Tyler said. Sir, I have copies of the documents if you'd like to review them. Your signature appears to be notarized and witnessed. When Patricia brought out the papers, Tyler's face went white. This isn't my signature, this is forgery. Mr. Morrison, if you're alleging document fraud, we'll need to involve our security department and possibly law enforcement. Tyler looked at me, then back at Patricia. Do it. I want every illegal transaction investigated and prosecuted to the full extent of the law. From the bank, we went directly to Tyler's lawyer, Robert Martinez, who'd handled Tyler's business contracts for years. Robert took one look at the financial documents and shook his head grimly. Tyler, this is criminal fraud on multiple levels. Identity theft, forgery, unauthorized access to financial accounts. We're not talking about a messy divorce here. We're talking about felony charges. What are my options? Tyler asked. File criminal charges immediately. The prosecutor will handle the fraud case and will handle the civil recovery. With this level of documentation, you should be able to recover most of the stolen money and protect yourself from the debt she created. What about the divorce? Robert smiled grimly. With fraud this extensive, especially involving forged documents, this becomes one of the easiest divorce cases I've ever handled. She'll get nothing, and she'll be lucky if she stays out of prison. That afternoon, Tyler filed a police report for financial fraud and identity theft. Detective Sarah Williams, who specialized in white-collar crime, reviewed our evidence with the methodical precision of someone who'd seen this pattern before. Mrs. Morrison fits the profile of what we call a financial predator, Detective Williams explained. Someone who targets victims through romantic relationships, gains access to their finances, then systematically drains their resources while maintaining the facade of a loving partnership. How common is this? Tyler asked. More common than people realize. The victims are often intelligent, successful people who would never fall for traditional scams, but who are vulnerable when it comes to trusting someone they love. Detective Williams paused, studying Tyler's face. Mr. Morrison, I need to ask you a difficult question. Have you considered the possibility that your entire relationship with your wife was planned from the beginning, that she targeted you specifically? Tyler looked confused. What do you mean? I pulled out Michael Chen's investigation file, the one that detailed Stella's previous marriages to men with aging parents and valuable assets. Tyler, there's something else you need to know about your wife. Detective Williams reviewed Michael's documentation with professional interest. This establishes clear pattern behavior. 3 marriages, all to men with elderly parents who had assets worth inheriting. In each case, the predator positioned herself as a caregiver, while systematically stealing from both the spouse and the elderly parent. You're saying she specifically chose me because of Dad? Tyler asked. I'm saying she researched you before your first meeting. She knew about your mother's illness, your father's property, your business success, and your emotional vulnerability. The grief counseling group where you met wasn't a coincidence. It was a hunting ground. Tyler buried his face in his hands. So everything was fake. Every moment of our relationship, every conversation about love and building a future together, it was all just her studying me to figure out how to rob me more effectively. Detective Williams nodded sympathetically. Mr. Morrison, predators like your wife are extremely skilled at emotional manipulation. They study their targets and become exactly what those targets need them to be. The person you fell in love with was a performance designed specifically for you, but she seemed so genuine. She cried when she talked about losing her grandmother. She was so understanding about Mom's cancer. She seemed to care so much about taking care of Dad. All lies, I said gently. Michael's investigation couldn't find any evidence that her grandmother had died. The grief she showed you was probably rehearsed from previous performances with other victims. That evening, Tyler and I sat in my kitchen while he processed the complete destruction of everything he'd believed about his marriage. He'd lost nearly $200,000, but more devastating was the realization that every happy memory from the past 2 years had been built on calculated deception. Dad, I keep thinking about our wedding day. She cried during her vows when she talked about wanting to take care of our family. I thought she was overwhelmed by love, but she was probably just thinking about how much money she was going to steal. Tyler, don't torture yourself by reanalyzing every moment. Focus on the fact that you're free now. Focus on the fact that we can rebuild our relationship. But how do I trust anyone again? How do I believe in love when someone could fake it so convincingly for 2 years? It was a fair question, and one I'd been asking myself since Sarah died. How do you stay open to love when you've learned that some people are capable of faking it so completely? You trust carefully, I said. You pay attention to actions instead of words. You make sure that people you let close to you have their own sources of income and happiness, so they're not dependent on taking yours. Tyler nodded, but I could see the deeper damage that Stella had done. She hadn't just stolen his money, she'd stolen his ability to trust his own judgment about people. Dad, there's something else. When Detective Williams was asking about pattern behavior, it made me think about things Stella said about her previous relationships. She told me her first husband was abusive and stole money from her. Her second husband was emotionally unavailable and left her financially devastated. Let me guess. She was the victim in both situations, and you were going to be the man who finally treated her the way she deserved. Exactly. She made me feel like I was rescuing her from a history of bad relationships. Now I realize she was probably describing what she'd done to those men, but casting herself as the victim instead of the predator. The phone rang, interrupting our conversation. Tyler answered, and I watched his face change as he listened. That was Detective Williams, he said, after hanging up. They arrested Stella an hour ago. She was at the airport trying to board a flight to Mexico with $40,000 in cash and jewelry that she'd apparently been stockpiling. Flight risk, I said. She knew this day would come eventually. The detective said they found a storage unit rented under a fake name. It was full of luxury items she'd bought with stolen money, plus documents from her previous marriages. They think she was planning to disappear and start over with a new identity. Tyler looked around my modest kitchen, taking in the cracked linoleum and the outdated appliances that I couldn't afford to replace. Dad, I'm going to make this right. Every penny she stole from you, every month of suffering she caused you, I'm going to fix it. You don't need to fix anything, Tyler. You need to learn from it and move forward. No, Dad, I need to do more than that. I need to understand how I became the kind of person who could be so completely deceived about someone I lived with every day. Outside, the autumn evening was settling into darkness, but inside my kitchen, under the warm light that had witnessed so many family dinners over the years, I felt something I hadn't experienced since Sarah died. Hope that my son and I might actually emerge from this betrayal stronger than we'd been before it happened. The money could be recovered. The legal system would handle Stella's crimes, but rebuilding Tyler's ability to trust and rebuilding our relationship after 2 years of manipulation and lies would take something more precious than money. It would take time, patience, and the kind of love that Stella had never understood, the kind that gives without expecting anything in return. 6 months later, I stood in the courthouse wearing the first new suit I'd owned in 5 years, watching as Stella Morrison was sentenced to 4 years in prison for financial fraud, identity theft, and elder abuse. She looked smaller in her orange jumpsuit, diminished without the designer clothes and perfect makeup that had been her armor. Tyler sat beside me, his hand resting on my shoulder in a gesture that would have been impossible a year ago. The distance that Stella had carefully cultivated between us had been replaced by something stronger than our original relationship, a bond forged by surviving her systematic attempt to destroy our family. Mrs. Morrison, Judge Patricia Henderson said, her voice carrying the weight of someone who'd seen too many cases like this one. "You conducted a campaign of financial and emotional abuse that spanned multiple relationships and caused devastating harm to vulnerable people. Your victims trusted you with their most precious resources, their money, their family relationships, and their emotional well-being, and you exploited that trust for personal gain." Stella stood motionless as the judge spoke, showing no emotion, no remorse, no acknowledgement of the lives she'd damaged. Even now, facing prison time, she maintained the cold calculation that had enabled her to steal nearly $200,000 while convincing my son that she loved him. "The court finds that you represent a continuing danger to the public, particularly to elderly individuals and their families. You will serve 4 years in state prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. You will also pay full restitution to your victims in the amount of $187,432. As the bailiff led Stella away, she turned back once to look at Tyler, not with apology or regret, but with something that looked like contempt, as if she couldn't understand why he'd chosen to prosecute her instead of simply accepting her behavior. Outside the courthouse, Detective Williams shook our hands with the satisfaction of someone who'd seen justice served. "Mr. Morrison, your father's investigation made this one of the strongest fraud cases I've worked on. The evidence was so comprehensive that her defense attorney advised her to plead guilty rather than face trial." "What happens now?" Tyler asked. "Asset recovery. We've identified most of the stolen money and luxury items. You should recover about 80% of your losses within 6 months. The rest was spent on items that have depreciated or can't be recovered." Tyler nodded, but I could see that the money wasn't really what mattered to him anymore. Over the past 6 months, he'd learned that financial recovery was easier than emotional healing. "Detective Williams," I said, "what about her previous victims, the men from her earlier marriages?" "We've contacted both of them. They're considering whether to file charges for what she did to their fathers. Apparently your case gave them the courage to come forward about their own experiences." As we walked to Tyler's car, I thought about those other men, other sons who'd been manipulated into believing that their aging fathers were being cared for while actually being systematically robbed. How many families had Stella destroyed before she targeted ours? "Dad," Tyler said as we drove home, "I've been thinking about something. Do you remember when Stella first suggested that you might be developing memory problems?" "About 18 months ago," I replied. "Right around the time she started limiting your visits. I realize now that she was setting up a long-term strategy. If you'd ever tried to tell me about the money, she could have convinced me that your memory was failing and that you were confused about finances." It was a chilling thought, how close Stella had come to successfully isolating me completely while convincing Tyler that my attempts to seek help were signs of dementia. "She studied us, Dad. She studied our relationship, our communication patterns, our vulnerabilities. She knew that you would be too proud to ask for help directly, and that I would be too trusting to question her explanations for why you seemed to be withdrawing from me. But we figured it out," I said. "Thanks to your mother's planning and some good detective work, we figured it out." Tyler pulled into my driveway, but neither of us got out immediately. My house looked different now. The peeling paint had been replaced, the broken windows repaired, the front steps rebuilt. Tyler had insisted on using some of the recovered money to restore the home that Stella's neglect had allowed to deteriorate. "Dad, there's something I need to tell you. Something I've been thinking about since the trial ended." I waited, sensing that this was important. "I'm leaving the business consulting firm. I'm starting my own company, and I want to focus on helping families protect themselves from financial predators like Stella." "Tyler, that's a big change. Are you sure?" "I'm sure. Detective Williams told me that elder financial abuse costs families billions of dollars every year, and most of it goes unreported because the victims are too ashamed to admit they've been deceived. I want to help people recognize the warning signs before they lose everything." It was exactly the kind of response I would have expected from the sons Sarah and I had raised, turning personal tragedy into a way to help others avoid the same suffering. What would this company do? Background investigations for families who are concerned about new romantic partners, especially those who seem unusually interested in caring for elderly relatives. Financial monitoring services for seniors who want to maintain independence but need protection from exploitation. Education programs to help people recognize emotional manipulation techniques. Tyler paused, looking at my house where we'd both learned such painful lessons about trust and deception. I want to call it Morrison family security. I want to honor Mom's memory by protecting other families the way her planning protected us. She would love that, I said, feeling Sarah's presence in the conversation. She always said that experience without wisdom is just suffering, but experience with wisdom becomes service. That evening, Tyler stayed for dinner, something that hadn't happened in over 2 years before Stella's arrest. We cooked together in my newly renovated kitchen, talking about his business plans and sharing memories of Sarah that we'd both been too hurt to discuss during the years when Stella controlled our interactions. "Dad, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "Do you think you'll ever want to date again? To find companionship?" It was a question I'd been asking myself since the trial ended. At 71, was I too old to believe in love again, or too wise to risk being deceived? "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me thinks it would be nice to have someone to share meals with, to talk to in the evenings. But another part of me worries that I wouldn't be able to trust my judgment about people anymore." "That's how I feel too," Tyler said. "Stella was so convincing, so perfect at being exactly what I needed her to be. How do I trust my instincts about love when they were so completely wrong about her?" "Maybe," I said, "we don't trust our instincts alone. Maybe we trust our family, our friends, our community to help us see things clearly." Stella isolated both of us, made us dependent on her version of reality. Next time, if there is a next time, we make sure that doesn't happen. Tyler smiled, the first genuinely happy expression I'd seen from him since this nightmare began. "Next time anyone I'm interested in has to pass the Louis Morrison test." "What's the Louis Morrison test?" "They have to genuinely care about my father's welfare, not just claim to care. They have to encourage our relationship, not limit it. And they have to understand that anyone who marries into this family is marrying into a partnership, not inheriting a source of income." As the evening wound down, Tyler helped me clean the dishes, another simple pleasure that Stella had stolen from us, by convincing him that such visits were burdensome to me. "Dad, I have one more confession to make." "What's that?" "I missed you. During those 2 years when Stella was keeping us apart, I missed talking to you about work, about life, about Mom. I missed having a father who knew me well enough to give me honest advice. I missed you too, son. More than I can express. Stella told me that you said spending time with me reminded you too much of Mom, that it made your grief worse. She said you needed space to heal. I never said anything like that. If anything, being with you helps me remember the best parts of your mother." Tyler's eyes filled with tears. "She was so good at taking the truth and twisting it just enough to make her lies believable. She turned my love for you into a reason to stay away, and turned my respect for your independence into permission to neglect you. But we're here now," I said. "We survived her, and we're stronger for it." A year later, Tyler's company was thriving, helping dozens of families avoid the kind of financial and emotional devastation that Stella had inflicted on us. He'd recovered most of the stolen money and used part of it to establish a scholarship fund in Sarah's name for students studying elder law and financial fraud prevention. I'd started volunteering at the senior center, teaching other older adults how to recognize financial predators and protect themselves from exploitation. The experience of being victimized had become the foundation for helping others avoid the same fate. Tyler never remarried, but he found peace in his work and in our restored relationship. He visited every Sunday for dinner, and we talked honestly about everything: work, loneliness, hope, and the lessons that pain had taught us about the difference between love and manipulation. Stella served her full sentence and was released after 4 years. Detective Williams told us that she'd moved to another state and was reportedly working as a cashier at a discount store. The glamorous lifestyle funded by stolen money had been replaced by the reality of being a convicted felon with no marketable skills beyond deception. Sometimes I wondered if she ever felt remorse for the families she'd destroyed, but then I remembered her expression in the courtroom, cold, calculating, angry at being caught rather than sorry for the damage she'd caused. The truth was, I no longer thought about Stella very often. She'd been a chapter in our lives, a painful but ultimately instructive experience that had taught us the difference between genuine love and expert manipulation. What I thought about instead was Sarah's wisdom in preparing for exactly this situation, Tyler's courage in facing the truth even when it destroyed everything he'd believed about his marriage, and the strength we'd found in choosing honesty over comfortable lies. On my 72nd birthday, Tyler brought me a framed photograph of Sarah that I'd never seen before. In it she was laughing, her eyes bright with the intelligence and humor that had made me fall in love with her 40 years earlier. "I found this in her old jewelry box," Tyler said. "There was a note on the back." He turned the frame over to show me Sarah's handwriting. "For Lewis and Tyler, true love doesn't steal from you, it gives to you. True love doesn't isolate you, it connects you to the world. Remember this, and you'll never be fooled by counterfeits." Even in death, Sarah was still protecting us, still teaching us, still helping us distinguish between love that builds and manipulation that destroys. As I looked at my son's face, healthy and peaceful for the first time in years, I realized that Stella's greatest failure hadn't been getting caught or going to prison. Her greatest failure had been underestimating the power of genuine love, to survive any attempt to destroy it. Tyler and I had lost money, time, and trust, but we'd gained something more valuable: the knowledge that our relationship was strong enough to survive systematic attack, and the wisdom to protect it better in the future. That knowledge, I thought, was worth every dollar Stella had stolen.